Welcome to Be Well. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Jonathan from your YMCA, and I'm honored to have these conversations with leaders in their field related to living mindfully. As your moderator, I come to you with 30 plus years experience in mindfulness, wellness, and mental health. I want to share with you a quote by Rumi. Rumi was a Persian poet and scholar from the 13th century. And I like a lot of his quotes and sayings because they seem to not only reverberate, but they actually are relevant throughout the centuries and relevant to today. His quote is, what purifies you is the right path. I will not try to define it. Let go of your mind and then be mindful. Close your ears and listen. The world is a mountain in which your words are echoed back to you. And why I like this is Mental Health Awareness Month, the month of May. And we have the opportunity today to learn about a particular intervention in mental health called neurofeedback. And we're going to talk about neurofeedback and mental health as well as optimal performance. And as I understand, and we will learn, neurofeedback is a method of non medication physiological treatment to address mental health conditions. So I look forward to learning a great deal about that today. We're fortunate to have Dr. Christiana Silva, one of the co-owners of the San Diego Center for Neurofeedback. Christiana, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, everyone. Looking forward to chatting with you guys, giving you some information.
Christiana is a Ph.D. licensed psychologist, has practiced in San Diego for 15 plus years. Also the founder of the San Diego Center for Counseling, which is a nonprofit that provides free counseling to children impacted by traumatic events. Very excited to see what we can all learn today about the whole area of neurofeedback. Christiana, I know you and Dr. Hilber have brought through the whole neurofeedback for San Diego in terms of your center. How did you get interested in this?
That's a great question. It was kind of by chance. It was one of those things when you're a clinician. About 14 years ago, we were practicing, and our main areas of focus were ADHD and autism. And so my goal is when a client comes in, I take personal responsibility of making sure the client's feeling good and they're healed and they're able to go out to their life, living to their fullest potential and feeling amazing. And so some of these conditions or mental health diagnosis that would come in, such as depression, anxiety, PTSD, ADHD, what I would start to notice is that we would make it to about 70%, but there was this little part that we couldn't get over. And so no matter how hard I tried, no matter the techniques I used, they still had these issues. And I'll give you an example. So working with ADHD, these cute little adorable kids come in and they're ready to do well and work hard. And so me as a therapist with my experience, I'd come and say, okay, you hit your brother. How can we not hit your brother again? Or I need you to focus in class. Here are some techniques for you to use your impulse control. And these kids would, be excited, I can do it. And then they go home an hour later, hit their brother and not pay attention in class. And, after a while of having this pattern and just feeling terrible that this little guy really wants to do well, he's been given all the techniques that we know to use as therapists, yet he still comes back and then feels defeated after this repetitive pattern of trying to get him to behave well. And so we started to explore, are there any other options? Because at the time, what we knew was there was medication. So trying to talk to parents and say, I think it's time for your child to go on medication first, is most parents intuitively just don't want to put their kids on medication. So that was a challenge and a discussion. Or they've tried it and it didn't work, or there were side effects. And that conversation happened a lot with most of the diagnosis, PTSD, and also depression and anxiety. So we started researching and happened to find neurofeedback. I'm the type of person I want to explore and learn about my craft. I love therapy. I love mental health. I love helping people to get to a better place so they can enjoy. And so we started practicing neurofeedback, actually doing it, and found how beneficial it was for ourselves. And then we went to training with the authors up in LA and learned all about it and just found what a profound difference to be able to let our clients know that medication isn't it. It might be a great option for you. It might be super helpful and wonderful, but if it's not, here's another option.
What I'm excited to learn what neurofeedback is, but I just think about the example you gave of, the sibling who was hitting his brother and didn't have that control. Geez, if my brothers had that neurofeedback, my childhood could have been very different.
And I tell you, Jonathan, you're absolutely right, because one of our clients, or actually most of our clients that come in, we do a rating scale. And from a 10, they can go down to a level 1 in reactivity. And for a family, for a parent, I'm a parent, it's life-changing when your kid is not beating someone up every day or causing problems at school. It's life-changing, and that's why we do it.
That's profound, that example there from 10 to 1 in terms of reactivity. So if you will, Christiana, define for me what neurofeedback is.
Sure. So neurofeedback basically, back in the days around the 1940s and 50s, I believe it was being researched. And what they found is that they simply feedback the brain's EEG report that the brain automatically wants to correct and fine tune and get better. And so through that research, what they realized is that we're trying to find a peak performance. Too high of a brain means that you're anxious, rumination, OCD, tics. Too low of a brain, depression, ADHD, foggy brain. And so peak performance is when your brain is at its optimal. So I want you to imagine those days where you wake up and you're clear. Your brain is like, great, it works, it functions, you can communicate, and you feel alive. And so what we're trying to do is show the brain where it's at, so that the more times it does neurofeedback, it self-corrects and it's able to learn from that information and stay in peak performance. So how it does it is relatively easy. We put electrodes on the head. So most people ask, is that scary? Does it hurt? The answer is no. There's just a little paste you stick on the scalp with the electrode. And what that does is it reads the brain waves, throws it into the TV. And what the TV has is a computer program with either games or movies. So when you're there, you can pick, do you feel like just vegging out, watching a movie for 30 minutes, or do you want to be more interactive and play a game? And so while you're playing, what happens is that it's giving feedback. So when you're watching something, the screen is going to start to shrink and go up and down. And so what that's telling the brain is when it's shrunk, it's not good. We don't want to stay there. So when it goes out, bing, that's it. Just like dog training. This is what we want. And so the brain starts to see the big screen more and wants to get there. We also have headphones on for the sound. So when you're not in peak performance, it goes down and the sound gets a little bit more dim. When you're in peak performance, boom, the volume goes up. And then we have you holding a cute little teddy bear, and the teddy bear at peak performance will start to vibrate. So you've got those different areas that through our sensory system, we're basically reinforcing you to stay in the peak performance. So what's kind of fascinating and different than medication is that we just want you to be your best self. We're not trying to sedate you. We're not trying to lift you. We're trying to get rid of all of the cobwebs so that you can feel alive and just yourself.
Wow, that's a fascinating process. Christiana, you listed kind of a litany of mental health conditions that neurofeedback is effective for. Is it more effective for certain conditions versus other conditions? Is it not effective for particular conditions?
One of the conditions that is researched the most is ADHD. And I believe the Board of Pediatrics had listed it as the #1 treatment, even over medication. So very profound for ADHD. In my experience, kids who come in that are more oppositional and have behavior problems seem to do well. Kids with inattention that we need to lift takes a little bit longer. There's a great, fantastic book called The Body Keeps the Score that talks about trauma and PTSD. I recommend it highly to everyone. Vanderkook is phenomenal in explaining how trauma is a tricky thing to heal, and neurofeedback is wonderful for it. Of course, depression. My favorite is adults with anxiety, to be able to allow them to see peace and to feel calm and to not hold on that extra anxious energy, especially with, say, irritable bowel.
So I'm thinking about if I came in for a session, Christiana, we would talk maybe about what I'm wanting to achieve. We would put these electrodes on. I'd watch a movie. As you said, the screen kind of distorts, and then I am I'm attending focally in a particular way to have it get to a clear screen, so to speak. And then if I'm out of that clarity, then I'm needing to attend to it again to get it to a space so I see it responding to how I respond. Is that what you're sharing?
Yes, and what's even more fascinating is that actually it's a passive process. So I think what you're alluding to is that actively want to try.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating about the brain is the brain is reacting before we even have time to think. So by the time you've thought something, the brain should already be correcting. And if you think about our lives and anxiety, anxiety is us trying to force something, to do something. And if we just be, magically the brain takes care of us. And so neurofeedback is like that. And for high achieving people such as ourselves that want to control or make things happen, it actually is difficult to just sit and realize that all you need to do is watch this TV show. And so we can actually tell if someone's trying to make something happen and they clench, we can actually notice that they are not in the peak performance, because what we want you to do is just be.
Wow, that's fascinating. And then what would I expect over sessions? And what would be a typical course of treating something like, let's say, anxiety or depression, if there is a typical course?
Absolutely. So, what I try and tell our clients is that everybody's different, everybody's brain's different, but typically we look for either 20 to 40 sessions. So, 20 is really the goal for people with a single incident. Let's say you've been in a car accident and you have some anxiety left over from that, or a bad breakup, but other than that, life has been pretty good. 40 sessions and up sometimes are for the more chronic issues. ADHD is one of them. If you've been depressed for most of your life, that's one of them. Anything that you can answer that, you know what, I've been battling this with this for many years, that would be an example.
So I'm thinking about, so I have a session and I come back for another session. So first off, what does it feel like? I have electrodes on. Am I experiencing something neurological or stimulating?
Great question. So the average person, no, you don't experience anything. There's no real sensation. Some people ask, do we hear anything, or do we know what's going on? Can we read your thoughts? No, it's just reading these waves. And there shouldn't be anything but feeling better. So some side effects that we have, you might get a headache. So if we're too low with you, you might get kind of a dull, kind of heavy feeling in your head, and you tell us, and then we just correct up. Or if we're too high, then you might get like a sharp headache, or twitches in your body. But what we're looking for is our systems to start to kind of unlock. And what that looks like is, if you're in neurofeedback, I call it the windshield effect, where all of a sudden, poof, like everything just gets brighter. Like the colors are brighter, my eyes feel clearer. And so you can ask people with depression that when they're depressed, that feeling of fogginess in their head, that's what we're looking to lift. The other thing that you can notice is when you park your car and your car starts to click down, you might notice that in your body, that it's kind of relieving some of the anxiety that you might have had. So those are some of the good notices of what you might be experiencing. Usually the day after or that night, you notice that you sleep better and you wake up feeling more rested and energized. So it can take up to 5 sessions to find the right sites and the right location, but I would say by the fifth time, that you should be able to notice that I really like this. This is a great benefit to me.
And I'm thinking again to how you started it in your share with me, this conversation, that the body, the mind, the brain seeks homeostasis. And so there is a certain threshold or marker that it's trying to get to. And so when you have electrodes on, it's already working. Our brain is already on its own. We're not an active subject in some ways in this. It's already happening. What would be our part in it? So we have a session. Is there a dialogue about it? Do we discuss and break it down? Do we look at how to apply it? Or I'm just trying to understand. I like the idea that it just happens. It's great. I can't maybe sabotage it or enhance it, but I'm trying to understand how I can be involved in the process.
Absolutely. So this is where picking the right center is super important. You want to make sure, just like if you chose a doctor or a dentist, you want to make sure you're going to some place where you feel heard, where you feel people are listening to you, that they're educated, they understand, and they care. Because this is a mutual process. We're a team here. And so we've got over 6 technicians that work with us. We meet weekly to discuss every case, and we make sure you're getting better. If you're not getting better, I will reach out, someone will reach out and say, what's going on, and try and problem solve to figure out why are you not feeling better. And so the process should be collaborative in that when you come in for the first session, you're going to be telling us the symptoms that bother you. So it is different than talk therapy. So in talk therapy, I want to know your history. I want to know where you came from, the trauma you might experience, your life history. Neurofeedback is interesting, and it's sometimes we have to explain it to people. It's just a symptom, yes or no. Are you experiencing tension headaches, migraines, epilepsy, focus? What's your diagnosis? And so through that collaboration, we hope to answer all of your questions when you come in and make sure that you know about neurofeedback. Because it's not something we do every day, it's confusing to people, and they might be a little concerned or worried when they first come in. So we want to answer all their questions, explain it to them. And then we go ahead and teach them about the electrodes and where they'll go, and explain that they don't hurt, nothing goes in. It'll be a super enjoyable process. Make sure that they are feeling comfortable. And from their symptoms that they disclose to us, then what we do is we start a treatment plan. So I know if you've got ADHD, we're going to try and get up here to the frontal lobe. I know if you're trauma, we're going to get back here to the right-hand side of the brain. So,
And then how long would you say it sustains itself? And what would set it off from being in that state of optimal performance?
oh, great question. So I like to use this analogy of people with trauma. So if you've had a lot of chronic childhood trauma, or you've been in the military, I believe we all have brain tracks, right? And our brain works a certain way. And as we're young, usually it's amazing and great and perfect. That's why we go play, and we have no anxiety, and we have fun. And then the world kind of beats us up along the way. And so every trauma we experience, our train tracks that we have start to erode or shift to protective mechanisms. So our brain is a miracle, right? If it knows that I'm going to be injured by someone, it will either be hypervigilant to protect, or it will numb itself in order to protect as well. Well, that's great if you're going through a trauma, but if you are no longer in the trauma, if you're out of that environment or the war is over, your brain is still doing that to protect itself. And so what neurofeedback does is say, nah, you don't need to do that anymore. It's not useful. It's not helpful anymore. Let's get you over here. So what happens is through neurofeedback, when you process over and over and over again, you're creating your old baseline tracks that are helpful and healing. So if you do that over long enough, the goal is that it sticks. The goal is that you don't have to keep doing neurofeedback for the rest of your life. Remember, medication comes in to support a system, and you might have to take it for a while. Neurofeedback, the goal is to heal the brain. It's to get it back to its optimal performance. And if we do it long enough, it sticks. Now, if we don't do it long enough, and these train tracks are deeper, the brain's going to go there because it's easier. So we need to do it long enough and strong enough, kind of like going to the gym, enough to practice that skill so that you can transition off. Most of the time what we do is after, say, the 20 sessions or the 40 sessions, if people are feeling good, we say, how about you try taking a couple weeks off, see how you do. And people might say, you know what, I just feel better when I come. And so we have one person who's been coming for 4 years, once a month, because he just enjoys it. And we would consider him a peak performance person. He's not coming for depression anymore. He's coming because he wants to feel better. He wants his golf game to be better. He wants to feel more alive and sleep better.
And I like the example of the tracks, and some of the deeper tracks might need a little more remediation, so to speak, to get back to that optimal conditioning. Would stressful events, an additional trauma or something that triggers that old trauma set you back towards those tracks, and therefore you come back in for further work?
Yeah, great question. So absolutely. So let's imagine you have a lot of trauma, you do neurofeedback, you're better, you transition out, you get in a bad car accident. So of course your brain's going to remember, when I'm in a trauma, I go here. And so some of the time we can just do a few sessions, 3, 4 sessions, and it gets you right back to square one. we've got one client, she's my favorite, very reactive, tantruming every single day with her parents. And to see that after 2 years, they can come after, maybe an incident at school, come a couple times and back to normal.
Anything that the clients can do themselves to get them back on track?
Yeah, I think that that's where the mental health therapy comes to, really connecting with someone, getting support, and finding those patterns in your life that you might be engaging in that might reconfirm the tracks in the brain. Also looking at your system. So I think nowadays we're really paying more respect to the body and brain mind integration. So meditation, mindfulness, feeding yourself well, drinking lots of water. I have to, my big soapbox is I think nowadays in the last 10 years, there's so much focus on electronics and production and working. And we all, frankly, are depressed and overworked, and our systems know that. And so depression is skyrocketing, anxiety is skyrocketing. We're not socializing as much, especially teenagers. And our bodies are telling us the answer. The answer is we need to have calm times of peace in our lives, socialize, relax.
That's excellent. I just think about, as you said, there was an article recently, Michelle Obama was coming out and speaking to just this low-grade depression, just because of so many compounding experiences of negativity and just, as you said, electronics and news media and whatnot, and how that can draw our attention and our energy in a particular way. Does insurance pay cover for some of these services?
Yes, so insurance, some insurances do, they're getting slightly better. However, obviously we are working against medication, and there's a lot with that. But I would have to say that neurofeedback has tons of research, and they're looking at it even more. NASA uses it, military is now using it for people who are coming back from the war. And so the answer is yes and no. You can call your insurance and ask if they cover biofeedback, which is 90901. That's the code. There's a tricky little part that when they say, yes, we cover that, they might say, but only for migraines or tension headaches. And they might also say for medical conditions. So for our office, what we choose to do is we do a super bill. So we take cash up front, provide a super bill, and then you can go back to your insurance and provide that. Sometimes they like that better.
Christiana, you've referenced medication a couple different times. If I'm doing neurofeedback, do I need to be off medication, or is it okay if I'm on medication to still do neurofeedback? Any complication?
Yeah, great question. Medication is wonderful. We all know that it makes changes. And so, no, we would never want you to come off of it when you see us. It's totally fine to be on medication. Some people come to us so that they don't have to start medication as an alternative. Other people are on too much medication and it's frankly not working. So what we do is we work with you. We address which medications you're on. And then as you start treatment, it's interesting to see that sometimes people start to feel like, I don't think I need as much. And so they gradually start to reduce. Of course, we want you to speak with your psychiatrist or doctor. We work collaboratively with that. But the goal is if neurofeedback is working, you don't need the medication. So we do this kind of gradual shift as we start to make progress and you feel better. Can we start to decrease the medication? And that's usually the goal.
This is a fascinating field. I'm very interested in what you've shared. What is the kind of training that you had to go through as a practitioner?
Absolutely. So we went with the Othmers, and they're phenomenal. Their story touched me. They had a son with seizure disorder, and they started trying to research one. I believe Sue is the scientist, or her husband is, but they started collaborating and trying to figure out what can we do to help our son and how can we improve the quality of his life, and quickly learned that neurofeedback was the answer and how profoundly it helped him. So we went there for a few weeks, and every year we go back for more training, and it's all hands-on. So we get to be guinea pigs, and we put the electrodes on and get to experience it and learn from the hands-on, which is super crucial. We also offer alpha theta. So alpha theta, I would kind of relate it back to meditation. You have your eyes closed with a mask on, and basically it brings you super low so that you're at almost a meditative state. And so the sounds will bring you low to almost to the point that you're sleeping, and then a gong will happen to lift your system up so that you kind of stay in that trance meditation state. That is wonderful for PTSD as well.
Wow, I can see the complement with mindfulness and meditation, and that's part of why I was drawn to have you come and speak to this. I think of, as you referenced, the golf game, and I think of other, performance events such as any kind of sport, as well as presentations, whatever it might be, allowing ourselves to move to that highest level of ourself, our optimal performance, and just the applications of this sound phenomenal.
Yeah. And golf is one of those, I'm not a golfer and I'm terrible at it. But if you imagine what golfers have told me, that you have to be in that kind of calm Zen state and just connect with the ball at the right speed, right time. And isn't that neurofeedback what it's trying to produce? Is that you can just breathe, you can just be yourself, you can enjoy the game, and your responsivity is going to be spot on and target that ball, and it feels good when you're connecting. So
that's an excellent description. I think of that in mindfulness and meditation. It's being in that Zen state. It's being in that flow. Christiana and Dr. Silva, what a pleasure. I loved everything you shared, and I'm enlightened in this field now, and I'll be interested in learning more about it more personally. Anything you'd like to share just in closing?
No, absolutely. I definitely, we're here to help. We're over Mission Valley in San Diego. So feel free to reach out to us if you need any support. And The Body Keeps the Score is a great book, and many others about neurofeedback. We've got gobs of research on our website as well. So thank you.
Wonderful. Christiana, really a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your expertise, and thank you all for joining us. And I appreciate you being with us. Everyone be well. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.